Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. वेलकम, खुशामदीद। मेरा नाम आमिर जाफरी है और ये सेंटर ऑफ बायोमेडिकल एथिक्स एंड कल्चर का पहला इवेंट है 22 साल की हिस्ट्री के अंदर, 23वें साल की हिस्ट्री में माशाल्लाह, कि अब हम अपने तीसरी लोकेशन पे आए हैं, विच इज़ SIUT ट्रस्ट हॉस्पिटल। और बहुत से लोग जो हैं बहुत ज़्यादा खुश हैं कि हम लोग यहाँ एक्सेस हो गया है। यस, ऐसी ऐसी शक्लें देखने को मिल रही है जो हमने पहले बहुत अरसे से तरस गए थे देखने को। हमारा उन अलमनाई who've been with us, मतलब है वो जो रगे जां की तरह साथ होते रहे, मगर वो आने जाने की आमदोरफ्त की वजह से आई एम सो डिलाइटेड, आई एम सो हैप्पी दैट ऑल ऑफ यू आर हियर एंड वी गॉट अ होल स्पेक्ट्रम of people whom we known for years and people whom we've met for the first time online भी बहुत सारे हैं, and that's because the topic is such. So I'm really delighted to be able to present this first forum of at this location. So as you know that on May 18th of this year, the Criminal Law Amendment Act decriminalizing suicide in Pakistan was removed from the Pakistan Penal Code by a ruling of the Honorable Federal Shariat Court of Pakistan, thereby recriminalizing an attempt to commit suicide in the country. So this is Section 325 of the PPC, which is now is restored back to its original status. So this CBEC forum is being convened to discuss the impact of this ruling from the legal, medico-legal, and the mental health perspectives. All these seemingly disparate lenses have, however, one thing in common, which is the ethical concern for the person who has attempted suicide and changing his status from a victim to that of a criminal. So that has profound impacts, and that is what we will be examining intellectually. We must remember that this law of criminalizing suicide was inherited by Pakistan from its colonial masters, and they had that, and of course this was a norm in the entire world at that time, in the past many centuries, that suicide was a crime, and therefore we inherited the same thing. So there were no Sharia compliance routes when Pakistan adopted this in the Pakistan Penal Code at that time. The broader global trend, of course, has been to decriminalize suicide, and Muslim majority countries like Pakistan had actually pursued the same trend for decriminalizing. And we can include Turkey, for instance, does not criminalize suicide. Indonesia, there is no crime for attempting to commit suicide. In Bangladesh, they actually decriminalized suicide in 2022 also. Malaysia repealed the Criminal Act in 2023. Jordan does not treat suicide as a crime. Tunisia does not treat it as a crime. Morocco, there is no punishment. Central Asian republics like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, all of them do not present this as look at this as a crime. The UAE has also had historically a very punitive aspect to it, but now they have softened their stand and they refer attempted suicide people to mental health facilities. Iran, Islamic Republic of Iran, does not explicitly criminalize this also. So this afternoon, we have invited a stellar panel of experts from their own fields to examine the ethical and moral footprint of this ruling, examining it from their various vantage points. So the format of this this session would be that we will have 3 talks by 3 eminent speakers, and my colleague Farid will formally introduce them. After which we will have an open question and answer session in which we will discuss, take questions from the audience also, from the people online also, and have a discussion. Please keep your questions brief and just introduce yourself a little bit before you, when you ask your question. So over to Farid.
Actually, over to me first.
Okay, over to you.
Yes, first.
So
okay.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, no, you definitely know what is going on. But I think that we have moved into a new space, but Dr. Amir did not mention something very profound, which has also happened at CBEC in the past 2 or 3 months. Dr. Amir Jafri is now the chairperson of the Center of Biomedical Ethics and Culture. Yes. And he's too modest to announce that. So I thought I would take this opportunity as the first public event to actually make this announcement and to tell him that, and to tell all of you who have been very gracious enough to attend today, that we're very happy that now Dr. Amir is the chair. I joined CBEC personally myself 11 years ago, and I think Dr. Moazzam, who was the founding chairperson of Center of Biomedical Ethics and Culture, stepped down as chair. And since March 2000 of this year, Dr. Amir is now the chairperson. And I think both Dr. Moazzam and Dr. Amir both are like the dynamic duo, right? Like I think that's very much established, and everyone sitting in this room would agree. Those who know both of them would agree to that effect. But I think Dr. Amir has shown in the past 2 months what a great leader does. No, we have to do this. So we were at this workshop today, all right, in the morning, and Dr. Amir and I were conducting it together. And then he just sat back and he let me conduct the workshop. And I think that's a sign of a great leader, that you give this space to your juniors and you say, okay, you know what, I've passed this on to you, and you do it, you make mistakes, you fall down. I'll be there to catch you if you fall down, but make your own mistakes.
Okay, you will fall down if you don't sit now.
All right. So now I can let Fareed make the formal introductions of the speakers. So it's great. You guys are here for the at CBEC's new space and under CBEC's new leadership.
Let me begin with the brief introductions of our eminent speakers today. We have Professor Dr. Murad Musa Khan. He's an associate faculty member at the Center at the Brain and Mind Institute, currently affiliated at Khan University. He's also a professor emeritus at the Department of Psychiatry at Khan, and he has been our associate faculty at the Center of Biomedical Ethics and Culture at SIUT. And he's been coming here for years, joining CBEC for teaching sessions. He completed his MBBS from Dow and later pursued psychiatric training and fellowships from King's College London and Institute of Psychiatry London. And he also holds a PhD from University of London. He served as the president of International Association of Suicide Prevention from 2017 to 2020 and continues to serve on its board and contributing to the organization's global suicide prevention strategy. And his extensive research findings and contribution on social and ethical issues have been widely published in medical journals as well as lay press. And we continue reading his articles in Dawn as well. We also have with us Ms. Farah Khan. She is an advocate of High Court of Pakistan, and she also has rights of audience before high courts, district courts, special courts, regulatory bodies, administrative tribunals, and also a member of Sindh Bar Council, Karachi Bar Association, and Sindh High Court Bar Association. She holds a BS in philosophy and MSc in criminology from University of Karachi and an LLB from Hamdard. She's a co-author of Medico-Legal Digest, Pakistan's first comprehensive book on forensic science. And she's a research scholar with University of New York Virtual Library. She teaches us at Hamdard School of Law and Ziauddin's Faculty of Law. And her expertise include criminal law, human rights, medical negligence, and malpractice including other. And she has also conducted a CBEC forum with us before on her ongoing research on juvenile inmates. We also have Dr. Sumayya Sayyid Tariq with us. She's the Chief Police Surgeon of Karachi and a CBEC alumnus. She works as the administrative and technical head of medical legal services in Karachi, and you hear her name and read her name in news every day because she deals with every kind of incident that takes place in Karachi that intersects with law and medicine. She holds a MBBS from Dow, a diploma in medical jurisprudence as well, and she completed her postgraduate diploma in biomedical ethics from CBEC SIUT, and she's pursuing certificate in health professional education. She's a certified master trainer in sexual and gender-based violence and clinical management of rape, and she's involved in research on self-harm, suicides, and she's also a member of Parliamentary Special Committee on the Anti-Rape Investigation and Trial Act and Special Committee on the Sindh Medico-Legal Act. So without further ado, I will move to our speakers. So first session is a small talk by Dr. Murad Musa Khan. And Dr. Murad, you can just unmute your Zoom. And if you ask, I'll share your presentations when you.
Thank you, Fareed. I'll try and run my slides from here. If I have problem, I'll just let you know.
Okay,
I'm going to
I've
share
made you a co-host.
Okay. नहीं कुछ प्रॉब्लम है आप ही वहां से कर लीजिए तो आई थिंक इट विल बी बेटर
We'll just do that.
Okay, thanks. So I thought I'll just set the context in which we are discussing this recriminalization of suicide attempts in Pakistan. And I'm not going to talk too much about obviously the legal aspects. I'm not an expert. Touch upon the religious aspects as it intersects with clinical mental health care. And I'll leave it, for discussion, question and answer session. So next slide, please. So the ratio that WHO, the World Health Organization, usually professes is that for every suicide, there are at least 10 to 20 suicide attempts, and about 100 people get ideas of harming themselves or killing themselves. This is the rough ratio. Obviously, it varies. In some settings, the ratio of one suicide to suicide attempts is actually up to 40 to 60. And how many people get suicidal ideation, we don't know. But these are estimates. Next slide. But it's important to keep this in mind, particularly for countries which don't have good data. So we do not collect data on suicide or self-harm in Pakistan, either at the national or the provincial level. And we have to rely on WHO estimates, which do modeling for these things based on various parameters. And the latest WHO report that came out in 2021, it came out last year, but suicide rates for 2021, because there's always a little delay. They said that more than 13,500 suicides occur in Pakistan every year. If you look at the rates, it's usually published as 100 per 100,000. It's 5.6, more in males than in females, about almost 3 times more in males than females. By that estimate, that the graph I showed you, the slide I showed you previously, there are probably about 2 to 4 lakhs suicide attempts in Pakistan. My own research over the last several decades probably indicate this is an underestimate. Probably more people attempt suicide in Pakistan than the maximum age of 4 lakhs. The global average is 8.9. So Pakistan's suicide rates, according to WHO estimates, and I keep using the word estimate because these are not real figures, is much less than the global average. Next slide. So suicide does not happen in a vacuum. There is a pathway to suicide. People get onto the pathway. At the bottom of the pathway, I've written clinical depression. It does not have to be clinical depression. Some suicides happen without the presence of clinical depression or a psychiatric illness, but they are in the minority. So once the person becomes clinically depressed, then one of the important symptoms within depression is hopelessness, bezari. That is very important. And through that, the idea of harming themselves or taking themselves out of this very intolerable situation starts to germinate. Now, this, depending on a lot of circumstances around that person, may progress on to the person thinking about how to harm themselves. And eventually, if they reach a critical point where they do harm themselves, then if they survive, it is known as a suicide attempt or self-harm or non-fatal suicide attempt. But if they succeed, and I say succeed in inverted commas, it ends up in suicide. Next slide. Next click. It's also important that while this progress is going on, these are mediated by protective factors. It may be job, it may be connectedness, social support, personal resilience the person may have, the person's self-esteem, family support, children. In Pakistani context, if you talk to people, as we do in clinical settings, one of the things that stops people from trying to harm themselves is children, and then obviously religion. It's not in the order that I have shown you. For some people, religion may be the last threshold. In other people, it may be children, and so on. Next slide. Now, all the research that has been done over the last 50, 60 years in various countries, in high-income countries, low, middle-income countries, psychiatric illnesses feature in up to 90% of all suicides, some form of psychiatric illness. Now, these may be long-standing psychiatric illness, they may be very brief or short psychiatric illnesses, maybe for a few weeks only, but psychiatric illness feature very highly in suicides, in up to 90%. And the clinical disorder that really stands out amongst all the psychiatric illnesses like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, trauma, anxiety, and so on, is clinical depression. And I use the term clinical depression as opposed to just a state where the person feels depressed. Next slide. So this is suicide, what is called completed suicide. If you look at attempted suicide, the reasons are varied and various. It might be to draw attention to one's situation. A person may find themselves in a very stressful, intolerable situation and they want to escape from that. They just want to sleep sometimes. Some people feel trapped and they find harming themselves is the only way, feeling no one can help them, unable to find out of the predicament, to avoid shame or guilt for something that they may have done, and they feel it may come to light and become public, to punish oneself for actual or perceived harm to others, and they may have harmed others and they may feel very guilty about it. Feeling hopeless is a very, very important indicator of person being on the suicidal pathway. Relief from intractable physical pain, being diagnosed with a terminal illness, but having the mental faculties about. I had a patient, for example, who was diagnosed with dementia, and he was a very, very productive, high-flying executive. And as soon as he found out and it was confirmed, he decided, and this was in Canada, he decided to go for euthanasia. And then some people actually want to die. So the reasons are very varied. The list is not exhaustive, but these are some of the important reasons or the common reasons that come through when you talk to people and do research on people who have self-harm. Next slide. This is the Pakistan Penal Code, which has now been reinstated. Whoever attempts to commit suicide, does any act towards commission of certain offence, shall be punished with simple imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 year or fine or both. Next slide. Islam very strongly condemns suicide, like all monotheistic religion, but it goes much further than Christianity or Judaism in condemning it very explicitly in the Quran. Next slide. Islam actually has a very strong deterrent effect, and I want to emphasize this point, particularly in the context of how they are using this condemnation by Islam to punish those who attempt suicide. So it is an independent effect on lowering suicide rates or protecting people from suicide. When you do research, as Simpson and Conklin did a wonderful research, although it's quite dated, it's 1983. When you control for all factors, socioeconomic factors, occupation, gender, education, you control for everything. Islam has an independent effect in lowering suicide rates. Next click. Next. Yeah. So they did a cross-national study of 71 countries. Next. And this is then reflected when you compare religions or countries that are predominantly of one religion. Muslims have, or Islamic countries have the lowest suicide rates. So religion has a very important protective factor. Judaism also has a low suicide rate, but because the number of Jews are very small, they didn't use that in the analysis. Next slide. So the Islamic view on suicide is really based on this philosophy that only God has a right to create end-to-end life, and when human beings try to interfere, then they're interfering with God's work, and it's every Muslim's duty to respect this right. And strongly, and homicide and murder um, um, suicide is equated with homicide and murder, like self-murder, and therefore it is strictly forbidden. Next slide. But the controversy is here, and Shalabi has really highlighted this, and it has gone unnoticed completely in all the debate that we have, that it is really difficult to apply Islamic injunctions against suicide to cases of attempted suicide. And it is really controversial in countries, and there are still 25 countries approximately where suicide is still criminalized, and all of them are Islamic countries. When the Sharia law is then incorporated into legal system, suicide attempts, not completed suicide. Quran does not mention anything about attempted suicide. Suicide attempts are also considered as criminal acts, and victims are then liable to be prosecuted under law. And Shalabi makes this really important point. Attempted suicide should not be equated with completed suicide, as there are no strong Islamic principles against such a practice. Next slide. The other issue is about intent. And this is paramount. People who, for example, make an attempt, we do not know what the intent is. And like I showed you the slide about the reasons for the self-harm, there are many and varied. And it is extremely difficult even for experienced clinicians to determine intent. What is the intent of that person at that time when they made the attempt? And it is not easily determined. So Islam has very strong views against assuming other people's intention. Then there is also the issue of insanity, or being mentally disturbed and therefore not having full capacity to make rational decisions. So for both these reasons, the prosecution of people who attempt suicide is extremely controversial. Next slide. So in Pakistan, for many, many decades, the argument was that criminalizing suicide, as the Federal Shariat Court has again used this pretext, that it is a very strong deterrent. However, if you look at the research that is coming out now, and there's certainly much more research now than it used to be in the previous years, the number of suicide attempts and suicide have been gradually increasing. So if criminalization was a deterrent, then it's certainly not having its deterrent value. It's been overcome. But we do know religion does provide a very strong protection against hopelessness and suicidal behaviors. That's incontrovertible. Next slide. Studies on individuals who have attempted suicide or who have clinical depression, and one of the questions we do ask in mental state examination is about feelings of suicide, thoughts of suicide. Almost all of them are aware of the Islamic ruling against suicide. Islam mein khudkashi haram hai. They will invariably say that. And that works as a very strong protector against self-harm as well. But when you ask them, do you know what is the legal position of suicide in Pakistan? Invariably, majority of them say, no, we don't know. And most of them find out for the very first time when they present to the emergency department of a hospital and they're told about the medico-legal process. And that's where the story starts. And that is what creates fear in them. Of course, some people do know, and therefore they avoid going to these hospitals or hospitals where there's a medical legal center, but they are in the minority. Next slide. What does the research show in Pakistan? Most people who attempt and die by suicide are young people under the age of 30 years. There are more women than men in attempted suicide. Of course, there are more men than women in completed suicide. When you disaggregate gender and marital status for attempted suicide, then there are more married than single women. It's an important point to note, more married than single women. Whereas in men, there are more single than married men. And then when you look at the socio-economic status of the Pakistani population who die by suicide or attempt suicide, it's predominantly people in the lower socio-economic groups, the poor and the very poor, as opposed to the middle or the high income groups. Next slide. What is the current practice? And Dr. Sumaya can elaborate on this also. If there is a person who has made a suicide attempt, self-harm attempt, taken pills, cut themselves, try to hang themselves or whatever, they are brought to the hospital. Once they're brought to the government hospital where there is a medico-legal center, they have to be registered in the medico-legal register, in the medico-legal center. All medico-legal centers are only present in the government hospital, the main government hospital of the city. Large cities like Karachi may have more than one. For example, Karachi has 5 or 6, but the 3 main ones are Jinnah, Civil, and Abbasi Shaheed. Cases registered there. For my clinical practice, prosecution is very rare. In my 30 years of practice in Pakistan, the people who I have interviewed who have made self-harm attempt, almost invariably 99% said that they've never been prosecuted. But many of them have said they've been harassed and and money has been extorted, and they've had to pay bribes for the diagnosis to be changed or the medical legal registration not to be done. People who can afford to do not go to the government hospitals, they go to the private hospitals. Private hospitals do not have medical legal centers. There's no medical legal registration there. The most serious cases, the private hospital won't touch because they feel if death occurs, then they might get into complications. But for the non-serious cases, private hospitals do treat them. They may write accidental poisoning, or they may diagnose them with a medical diagnosis. And these cases go completely unmissed and they're not captured anywhere. Next slide. Who does criminalization in Pakistan affect the most? It is the poor. They're disproportionately affected because the poor only access the government hospitals. They can't go to the private hospital. They can't afford that. And medico-legal centers are only present in the government hospitals, so that's why they get captured. While the affording public in Pakistan avoid government hospitals, partly not because they may know about the legal formalities, but because they feel they'll get better care at private hospitals. The other group that is disproportionately affected is the women, for the reason that I've shown you. There are more women than men in suicidal attempts. And then the youth. So these are the 3 groups that is the most vulnerable for suicide attempts to be criminalized. Next slide. So this is my last slide. I want to leave you with this question: that should people be punished by the state for carrying out an act when the same state, through neglect and abdication of its responsibilities, as the Pakistani state does, creates conditions that drive individuals towards distress and desperation, putting them on the pathway of suicidal behavior? Who really should be punished? The individual or the state? I'm going to stop here and hopefully we can discuss more in the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
So questions we'll wait till the end. Yeah.
So there are 2 small talks by Ms. Farah and Dr. Sumaya now. So Ms. Farah, I'd like to ask you to shed some light from the legal point of view of the judgment and the law. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much, Amir Saab, for inviting me for this session. This is very important. Before I begin on the topic itself, Pakistan is a very weird country when it comes to deterrence and criminalization. I'll give you an example. Saturday night around 1:30, I receive a call from my father's attendant that he has been picked up by police. When I hired this person, obviously I'm a criminal lawyer, so I did a thorough background check. I asked a police friend to find out, what kind of a person he is, and he's a very sharif and innocent person. And when he said that he's been picked up by police, and I'm thinking, what did he do? So I asked him, like, what happened? He said, I did not register my tenancy agreement, and I've been arrested because of that. And they say that they will produce me before the magistrate on Monday. So I went to the magistrate on Monday, and this is the first time I'm reading the law. And I opened up the law book and I read that if you're a tenant and if you don't register your tenancy agreement with the local police station, the police can pick you up, lodge an FIR, arrest you. It's a non-bailable offense, punished with imprisonment of 6 months, and then a fine of rupees 45,000 to 1 lakh rupees. Now draw a comparison. You're driving your car and you hit someone on the road. The person dies, you run away, right? It is hit and run. The police can arrest you, but it's a bailable offense. There is no penalty. You will not go to prison. You will be given bail on the very first date. And the punishment is that you have to pay diyat amount, right? So if you can't pay diyat because you're poor, you will remain in jail for the rest of your life. If you can pay diyat because you're rich, you can walk out on the very same day. No redemption, no deterrence, no reflection of what you have ever done. This is the society we're talking about, and we're criminalizing suicide on the context and pre-context of deterrence. Now, deterrence, again, is a very weird concept to understand. People who have spoken about deterrence are philosophers like Durkheim, who were misogynistic and had weird philosophical ideas about how to keep a woman in check or how to keep youth in check. And they believed that the superiors in the society, the government and the men, should have more power, right? Because these are the people who can actually perform deterrence. Now, one of the components of the judgment, which is very problematic, I do not want this talk to be Islam versus suicide. No religion advocate for suicide, no society in its sane mind supports suicide, because societies are basically based and they practice that every individual should be given equal opportunity to excel, equal opportunity to access, and equal opportunity to redress whatever their grievances are, right? So this is what the society, a normal, sane society, is basically functioning on. The problematic aspect of this judgment, and I'll just go in a little bit of history. Pakistan was a very normal country up until Zia-ul-Haq happened. Our PPC was, yes, we borrowed it from the Britain, but we had to borrow something from the Britain because we had nothing, right? So we borrowed a structure of Pakistan Penal Code, which had punishments which were pre-partition, and we were basically working on. And Pakistan was moving towards something, and bang, Zia-ul-Haq happened. And then suddenly we remembered that we are Islamic Republic of Pakistan, so we have to Islamize the entire PPC. Prior to the Islamization, we had a section under the PPC which was talking about abatement of suicide. Now, this is very important to understand. Abatement of suicide is if someone is a victim of harassment, someone is a victim of domestic abuse, someone who's a victim of a crime, and now that person is being encouraged by another person to kill themselves. And this person, because he's a vulnerable person, acts on that encouragement and takes their own life. That was punishable under the PPC. When Islamization happened in 1989 and 1991, Federal Shariat Court, the same Federal Shariat Court, was tasked to look into the penal laws and Islamize it. Federal Shariat Court took that task upon. They Islamized the entire PPC. 1991, landmark judgment comes, and the entire PPC now includes terms like Qatl-e-Amd, Qatl-e-Shibh-e-Amd, Qatl-e-Khata, Qatl-e-bis-Sabab, and also a section of suicide. What did they remove? They remove abatement of suicide. Now, it happened in 1991. Why it's problematic? You're removing a culprit who's encouraging a vulnerable person who has no capacity to think and make a decision because he's in such those circumstances to take their own life. You are removing that person from the ambit of criminalization and you're criminalizing the victim. Similarly, when we introduced sex trafficking laws, you would be shocked to know that a person who has been sex trafficked was also an accused. They were not the victim, not the survivor. So if I am a 14-year-old, 13-year-old girl who has been smuggled from Sri Lanka or Bangladesh and end up in Pakistan, I am not a victim. I am an accused. I will have to face penalties, not the people who have actually trafficked me into Pakistan. So you see, a suicide attempter is exactly same as a sex offender in Pakistan or someone who's been trafficked for sex, right? We have no distinction. 2022, some rationality prevailed to the government because obviously we started talking about mental health. Started talking about mental illnesses. We started talking about, how important it is that government should, take these things seriously. And in 2022, they removed or decriminalized attempted suicide. When they decriminalize it, two individuals who thought they have access to the Federal Shariat Court, they go to the Federal Shariat Court and challenge it on the basis whether this is an Islamic act or not. Now, Federal Shariat Court has a very interesting jurisdiction. Federal Shariat Court can struck down any law, policy, decision of the government on the basis that it is repugnant to the Islamic injunction of Islam. It is not repugnant under the Islamic injunction of Islam to beat your wife up in the middle of the street and kill her. You will find no judgment of the Federal Shariat Court that this person should not deserve any leniency. But it is, of course, repugnant to the Islamic injunction of Pakistan to criminalize suicide. The problem under the law. I will only speak with the context of the criminal justice system. I am not a mental health expert. The only mental health situation I know is through ChatGPT. When I am working on a case and I'm basically exhausted and I Google my symptoms that I'm feeling this. Do you think I have gone clinically insane? And ChatGPT always says yes. So, it always says yes, you are clinically insane. It's because they have my history, the kind of things I researched on. So, the problem is the judgment talks about Section 84, which is a defense of insanity. I'm sorry I'm using this word because this is the word the law uses. It is an insulting word. It should not be used, removed. I know this, advocated for it, spoken very vividly about it, but unfortunately, it is what the statutes talk about. Section 84 of the Pakistan Penal Code provides a general defense, which means a complete defense to someone who is mentally incapable of making a decision, right? This is the extent of the definition or the provision of Section 84. Then come the concept of legal insanity. We've just heard Dr. Murad's very amazing presentation, and he used this terminology, clinical depression. You will be surprised to know that clinical depression, as per the Pakistani jurisprudence, is not legal insanity. So you're not legally insane if you're clinically depressed. You're only legally insane when you are suffering from a very severe mental disparament, which means schizophrenia, paranoia, or only in that cases you can be exempted. And that also requires determination at the stage of trial. So you can't take this plea at a higher level, at a Supreme Court level. So this person who's going through the trial have to take this plea before a trial judge who will then constitute a board. And then that board will determine whether this person, while the person was committing the act, whether at that particular time was he in under the lucid interval, yes or no. Now imagine the window is very, very thin. So even if you are someone who's suffering from schizophrenia, but when you attempted that particular act, if you were in lucid interval because you were under medication, going to the doctor, meeting with the doctor, your insanity defense goes like this. You are now principally legally capable to stand a trial. So when the Federal Shariat Court says that there is a defense of insanity available to certain people and they can take that defense if they commit suicide while they are not lucid enough, it is impossible to argue in a court of law who does not have the definition of A, lucid interval, B, legal insanity, and C, the circumstances are irrelevant before the court of law, why you have committed that act. So, the criminal trial operates under two situations. There is a law and there are facts. The facts are only relevant when the offense is not strict liability offense. What is a strict liability offense? A strict liability offense is that if you do this, you're punished. For example, if you marry an underage, you're punished. Your knowledge does not matter. Facts are irrelevant. You were put on a gunpoint to say yes, yes, yes during your nikah, irrelevant. You're not supposed to marry an underage. It's a strict liability offense, regardless of consent, regardless of your situation. The facts are irrelevant. Suicide or attempted suicide is a strict liability offense. The court will not ask, why did you try to kill yourself? The court will only ask, did you try to kill yourself? You say yes, 1 year imprisonment. Imagine, मैंने अपने आप को मारने की कोशिश की क्योंकि मुझे इस घटिया माशरे में नहीं रहना, मैं बच गई, मेरी किस्मत. अब मैं 1 साल जेल जाऊं इसी माशरे में और मुझे ये माशरा बताएगा कि मैं कितना लकी हूं कि मैं इस मुल्क के अंदर पैदा हुआ हूं. तो जब आप डिटरेंस के बारे में बात करते हैं, when we talk about deterrence, one of the component of deterrence, and why I'm using the word deterrence again and again, because I think that in the entire judgment, the Federal Shariat Court emphasizes on the fact deterrence, emphasizes on the fact that Islam is pro-life. What kind of life Islam promotes or advocate for? A life living under an abuser? A life living in a house where no financial means? A life living under a situation where you are asked to do things which you don't want to do? Is this what Islam promotes? No. Yes. So, this is not what Islam promotes. Islam promotes equality of life also. So when you say deterrence, who are we creating this deterrence towards? Are we creating the deterrence towards the state who's responsible to provide us healthcare, economical opportunities, rule of law, access to justice? If the state is failing to provide all of these, and like Dr. Murad said, they have failed to do what is their duty to do, and now they're asking me why I'm trying to kill myself because we failed to provide you all of this. This is a question the Federal Shariat Court should have addressed in the judgment. The second thing is, let's, for the sake of argument, let's say that yes, criminalization of the suicide will help the society. It will help people in general. It will open up the talks of mental health. It will open up the talks in schools, colleges, at household. Let's talk about how depressed you are. Why are you so hopeless? Why are you so unhappy? Okay, let's see at the positive aspect. What would have been the better judgment? The judgment would have been zero prosecution, mandatory state evaluation, mandatory psychiatric help, mandatory appointments to the doctor, understanding why the person is trying to kill themselves, understanding the household situation. Rather than making it a strict liability offense, it could have been a civil disobedience. It could have been a civil wrong. It could have been something कि ठीक है, if this person is suffering through an ailment, this person needs to go to a psychiatrist, this person needs to go to a doctor, and the state will make sure that he follows through. If the family is not supportive, the state should make sure that this person goes to the hospital. Rather than arresting the person, putting him behind the bar, and then sentencing him for 1 year for imprisonment for your own failure. Imagine a court, I'll give you an example. एक case था, 14 years this person fought in court of law. For what? For his right in the inheritance. The person lost in the Supreme Court of Pakistan. He sprinkled kerosene oil and burned himself outside the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Bach gaya. Now, the same court, Supreme Court of Pakistan, is asking this person, how dare you kill yourself? We failed you, yes, but how dare you kill yourself? So, we are basically avoiding a conversation. Federal Shariat Court is avoiding an important conversation. Why are we failing as a country where there is access to justice? Why are we failing as a country where mental health discussions are not a taboo? We are failing as a country why there is no equal economical opportunity, why there is gender imbalance, why there is so much domestic abuse, why there are so many sexual offenses. We are shying away from this conversation, and what we are trying to talk about, why are people killing themselves? This shows the mentality of the courts that it is not victim centric. It is basically trying to cover up their administrative failures and their judicial failure. It is a failing court system that puts people at the verge of killing themselves. अगर लोगों को ये यकीन हो कि उनको इंसाफ मिलेगा तो वो अपने आप को नहीं मारेंगे. ठीक है? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dr. Sumaya, you are on the ground. What happens on the ground?
Yeah.
कैसे उनके साथ?
So these
Thought
two,
please.
my esteemed colleagues have set the bar so high कि अब मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि मैंने किधर बोलना था और क्या बोलना था. So I'll take it down from the administrative level, from the mind level, and from the government failure level and the systemic failure level, and bring it down to the person. कहानियाँ ही होती है मेरे पास सुनाने को. So I'll tell you a story about an 18-year-old लड़की who is brought to the JPMC ER. जिना को रखूंगी बराबर में ही है. It's easier to address. So वहाँ पर उसको लाया जाता है, and apparently she has taken a fistful of whatever was available, OTC, whatever drugs were available around the house, उसने ले लिया है. I will not delve into the details. पीछे क्या था, बैकग्राउंड में क्या था. अब उसकी नानी उसके साथ हैं और वो रो रो के मिन्नतें कर रही हैं मेडिको लीगल ऑफिसर की कि प्लीज़ मेरा केस ना लिखा जाए. एंड अच्छा, इसका अदर एंड ऑफ द स्पेक्ट्रम, the ER doctors have not initiated gastric lavage. They have not initiated life-saving measures for want of that medico-legal number. And on top of that, once the nani ends up paying 1,000 rupees for the medico-legal certificate number, she gets the thappa and the number and everything. She is then taken to the National Poison Control Center where the gastric lavage happens after the time, after almost 5 to 6 hours. So that's something जो कि रोज होता है. 2022 में decriminalization जब हुई तो we were steadily moving towards the betterment. हमें लगा कि कोई change आएगा. And Murad Musa Sahab and myself, we were working on a model where we would find at the insistence of the treating doctors, हम medical legal number issue करेंगे, but since it is decriminalized, तो हम पुलिस को involve नहीं करेंगे. Unless of course things go south और कोई serious हो जाता है और फिर हम उसको refer करते हैं. मतलब they are referred to us as a medical legal case. This we called as a midway register. Neither here nor there, a transit thing. That was working quite well till this year. Fast forward 2022 से, last year we initiated a Hope Harbor project in Nagar Parkar. Hope Harbor project Sindh Integrated Emergency Health Services का एक project है. They also run the Teletabib 1123 and they cater to people who call them up और उनके जो भी issues होते हैं, ज़्यादातर suicide से related, कुछ childbirth से related, they are handled then and there. And some of them are in the process of developing a safe haven for the suicide survivors, जो कि उस जगह पे उनको रखा जा सके, उनको rehab किया जा सके, and perhaps reintegrate किया जा सके. So this would have been our feather in the cap. Sudden recriminalization होती है, and it takes away everything that we worked for. 2022 से आज तक, I think we've gone down to zero again. Then दूसरे angle पे आप आओ. So we have the Amal Act. Amal Act was initially Sindh Injured Persons Emergency Treatment Act. And non-violent तरीके से अपनी जिंदगी को ख़त्म करना, it's not taken as an injury. So injury is something जो मुझे, जहाँ से मैं bleed करूँगी, जहाँ मेरा fracture हो जाएगा, compound fracture हो जाएगा, whatever. So injury, that will not be considered as an injury. So Amal Act technically does not apply here. Like everyone is going to stop Please, pehle medico-legal ka thappa. It's very important. And by medico-legal, you can put it as /police. So it's ML/police. Ek aur case. I met this guy at around 9:30 a.m. in the morning, one fine Monday, sitting there, and this guy comes in, and he has been coming to Jinnah Hospital for almost 5 days now. This is his 5th visit. He has papers, the ER slips, to show for every single visit that he has been there for. So I asked him, my mortuary assistant was being particularly cruel to this man, particularly cruel, verbally cruel to this man, and saying, when you will not get the medico-legal certification done, how can you get admitted to NPCC for your treatment? So I asked him, why are you bothering this man so much? Tum isko register karo. Wo aaya hai, send him there. Till that time, I did not know that this is his first visit. So I found out the details. Usi se pucha. He said 5 days back, I had a fight with my wife और मैं घर में पैनाडोल के पत्ते पड़े थे 4-5 वो मैंने सारे खा लिए थे कुछ और दवाएं भी थी. So Panadol, if you've taken them, 5 day is quite the end of it. That's when the cirrhosis and the changes and everything is kicked in and treatment will not work much anymore. He died on day 13. So for 5 days he was coming. The 5th day that I met him, he did not want the police to be involved, so he would refuse anything. The medico-legal certification. He did not have the money to pay my, sorry, I have to go that angle. I'm sorry. So he did not have the money to pay my mortuary assistant so that a false number could be given and a thappa could be placed so he could get admitted because he was a poor man. And when I finally saw him and got him admitted, I said, police will not come to you. I am writing the case. Police will not come to you. That's a promise. But it was already too late for him to survive. Impact, ये अकेला था बंदा. He was all alone. वो जो लड़की थी, जो पहले मैंने, वो लड़का भी हो सकता है, वो बच्चा भी हो सकता है, जिसका एग्जाम में रिजल्ट अच्छा नहीं आया है. बहुत सारे फैक्टर्स हैं. पेरेंट्स भी बहुत सारे परेशान होते हैं. They don't know क्या हो रहा है. पेरेंट्स को नहीं पता, विक्टिम को नहीं पता. वो विक्टिम सर्वाइवर बनेगा या नहीं बनेगा ये भी नहीं पता. So things can go south at any point in time. Treatment delay हो रही है. अब हमारे पास अब एक और चीज जो आ गई कि पहले तो वी वुड नॉट रिपोर्ट. फ्रॉम 2022 हमें ये था कि यार इफ थिंग्स गो साउथ लेट्स राइट इट डाउन बट वी विल नॉट रिपोर्ट टिल द टाइम दैट पर्सन इज रियली ऑन द वर्ज टू डाई, अबाउट टू डाई, या उसकी स्टोरी चेंज हो गई या हिस्ट्री बदल गई, वट एवर, सुसाइड से या होमिसाइड पे चले गए या एक्सीडेंटल से कोई और स्टोरी चेंज हो गई. सो लेट्स नॉट रिपोर्ट एंड वी जस्ट वेट. सो फॉर 3 years, 3 blessed years, we didn't have the pressure that we have now. Now it means कि पुलिस को कॉल करना है. So what happens next? Human cost step. Does criminalization make it work? I don't think so. Now मैं professional angle से हटके अब मैं personal पे आती हूँ. And I think आप लोगों के लिए भी surprise होगा because I thought I should talk about it. Normally I talk about whatever traumas that I've gone through. I'm a suicide survivor. Twice I attempted suicide. So दोनों वक्तों में मैं बच गई थी. ML नहीं हुआ था because people around me could afford my treatment. और अगर मैं वहां पे गई होती या जो कुछ भी हुआ होता तो I knew what would happen to me. And the worst thing is, coming from my own experience, ऐसा उनके साथ भी होता होगा जो जिन्ना अस्पताल की emergency, who have the misfortune of landing in जिन्ना अस्पताल की emergency, or for that matter any government emergency. My entire family was blaming me for doing something which I did not know how I did, but I did. Not once, but twice. तो अभी आप इसमें ऐड इन कीजिए, मिक्स में मर्की करें वाटर्स को, मर्की नहीं करें, डर्टी कर दें वाटर्स को. इसमें ऐड कीजिए मेडिको लीगल का प्रेशर, इसमें ऐड कीजिए पुलिस का प्रेशर, इसमें ऐड कीजिए वो सर्वाइवर बेचारा जो अभी विक्टिम ही है, और उसके बाद फैमिली का प्रेशर, फिर सराउंडिंग में अगर इन लॉज हैं तो उनका प्रेशर. ये सब चीजें ऐड ऑन कीजिए और उस पर तड़का फिर पुलिस का लगा लीजिए. No, तो that's the thing, that is exactly what we are talking about. कि recriminalization जो है, जो इसको आपने अब गुनाह बना दिया है, कानून भी कहता है एक्टस रियस एंड मेंस रिया, पहले इंटेंट है और अगर वो इंटेंट पूरी नहीं होती है तो उस पर सजा नहीं होती है। तो ये कैसा कानून है जो मुझे एक इंटेंशन पे, मेरा इंटेंशन ये था कि मैंने इनको मारना है मगर मैं इनको नहीं मार सकी, ये बिल्कुल ठीक है, तो मुझे सजा टेक्निकली स्पीकिंग नहीं मिलनी चाहिए। सो मैंने अपने आप को मारने की इंटेंशन की थी, मैं अपने आप को नहीं मार सकी, कंप्लीट नहीं कर सकी, तो फिर मुझे सजा कैसे मिल सकती है? हाउ कैन कानून बी वन इन वन एस्पेक्ट एंड द अदर इन द अदर एस्पेक्ट? मेरी सुसाइड कंप्लीट नहीं हुई तो टेक्निकली स्पीकिंग मुझे सजा नहीं मिलनी चाहिए। इनफैक्ट इट्स अ क्राई फॉर हेल्प। हैविंग लिव्ड थ्रू 2 सुसाइड्स माई सेल्फ, आई नो उस वक्त मुझे कितनी जरूरत थी सपोर्ट की। सो वो चीज एक एक्सीडेंटल। फिर हमारे पास एक और स्टोरी आती है विच इज लाइक पीपल वुड नॉट से कि ये सुसाइड की है, पीपल वुड से कि दिस इज एन एक्सीडेंटल इंजेक्शन, हमने गलती से पी ली थी, पेप्सी की बोतल में फिनाइल पड़ी थी वो उठा के हमने पी ली, या रैट पॉइजन पड़ा था उसको हमने घोल के पानी में, हमें शरबत नहीं मिल रहा था तो वो हमने एक्सीडेंटल। सो इट्स वी नो दे आर कवरिंग इट अप, वी नो दे आर कवरिंग इट अप फॉर द फैमिली, दे आर कवरिंग इट अप फॉर द माशरा, दे आर कवरिंग इट अप फॉर द medico-legal, दे आर कवरिंग इट अप फॉर ट्रीटमेंट एंड दे आर होपिंग कि इस सारी चीज के दौरान उनका जो विक्टिम है वो जिंदा सर्वाइवर बन के निकल आएगा। एंड in this midway register which we developed, Professor Murad Musa and myself, इसमें हमने psychological intervention, psychiatric care, psychiatric rehab को mandatory किया था। हर केस को, every case of self-harm was being mandatorily reported to the Department of Psychiatry. So I guess I have covered, I am still, I think, within my time limit. I like, since being a student here, I'm the only one at a disadvantage. Okay, I can be okay. So fear of police, basically, बहुत सारा murky, things messed up in the mind. It's like the external triggers, denial of care, frustration of family, blame to the victim. सब चीज को मिक्स कीजिए और इस recriminalization के साथ साथ पुलिस का वो भी डाल दीजिए. That becomes worse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Soya, for a very personalized account of this all and what the victim goes through. And I think Ms. Farah and Dr. Murad have also set the stage for a very interesting discussion that we can now have. And open up the floor for questions. Just keep your questions brief, and we'd like people to just briefly introduce themselves also, and not make comments, just questions. So and online में please अपना नजर देखिएगा आपके, so that we don't ignore our online folks. जी मैं देता हूँ, आपको भी देता हूँ।
मैं पूछूं पहले। मैं कह रहा था कि आपने जैसे अभी बताया कि आप पहले इसमें साइकियाट्रिस्ट को भी रेफर करती थी, और क्योंकि वो इसमें ना पुलिस इन्वॉल्व होती थी ना कुछ होता था, तो आपके लिए बहुत सारा कुछ आसान था। लेकिन अब वो रिक्रिमिनलाइज हो गया है सारा सिचुएशन, तो इसका अब कोई सोल्यूशन आपके पास है या आप सजेस्ट कर सकती हैं? ठीक है, ये सारे रोने तो हैं, लेकिन अब कोई सोल्यूशन है इसमें? अब ये सब कुछ कैसे रिवर्स हो सकता है? इसके लिए क्या फिर करना होगा दोबारा से? यानी यही क्वेश्चन मिस फारा से भी है कि क्योंकि वो लीगल एस्पेक्ट्स को ज्यादा।
Typical Dr. Fakhir question. Typical Dr. Fakhir question. So thank you very much.
सॉरी, मेरा नाम डॉक्टर फाखिर है और मैं यहाँ CBEC का स्टूडेंट था।
Yeah.
Alumnus. आपकी एक और भी है, मतलब you do something else as well in your other life.
Okay, so जो you've raised a very pertinent point. मुझे खुद नहीं पता यहाँ से हम कहाँ जाएंगे. But I believe the way forward is that I would want to talk to the IG Sindh, and I would want to talk to him about these cases which actually require psychiatric, medical/psychiatric intervention at all times throughout the process. And then perhaps we could set up a benchmark as to where we involve the police and when we involve the police. However, I am limited in my own knowledge saying whether we will agree to some benchmark which becomes acceptable to the law. Perhaps you could point that out. Or will we be able to find a way out of all of this? I don't know.
I think
मैं सवाल पूछ सकता हूँ क्या?
sorry, एक second. Can I just answer to this question? There is the way out is actually in the judgment, because they have recriminalized it, and now perhaps the government has this wonderful opportunity to basically legislate. And through this legislation, whatever discussions that we have, it is high time that the government of Pakistan involve experts like Dr. Sumaya, Dr. Murad, who knows mental health, legal system, medico-legal, police and prosecution difficulties. And 325 को अगर आपने दोबारा से recriminalize करना ही है तो I think this is a high time to add the right provisos कि किस situation के अंदर क्या हो सकता है, सज़ा को ख़त्म करके प्रोसिक्यूशन एलिमेंट को ख़त्म कर दे। और वो उसी वक्त होगा जब वो पब्लिक प्रेशर क्रिएट किया जाएगा गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान पे कि जी आप इसको ऑटोमेटिकली वापस से किताब में ना ला दें, जैसे वो कंट्रोल और डिलीट करने के बाद आप अंडू का बटन दबाते हैं तो वापस सब कुछ आ जाता है। वो करने के बजाय रिफ्लेक्ट कि क्या आने की ज़रूरत है और किस चीज़ को आप प्रॉपरली लेजिस्लेट कर सकते हैं। सो आई थिंक दिस इज़ अ वे आउट, बट इट इज़ डिफिकल्ट, लेकिन पीपल लाइक यू कैन एक्चुअली रेज द वॉइस, टेक इट टू द गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी, इसके ऊपर आप बाकायदा लॉबिंग करें, एडवोकेट करें। Maybe the government of Pakistan take this into serious accounts.
Yeah, there,
So,
we can
let
take
me ask you a question, if you allow me.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? मैं कुछ चीज़ों को clarify करूँगा. First of all, I'm like a psychiatrist over here, clinical professor of psychiatry also, and I'm 5 years junior to Professor Murad Musa. ठीक है? पहले तो आप लोगों को एक चीज को डिटरमिन करना पड़ेगा कि जो सुसाइड है, इज इट अ मेडिकल कंडीशन और नॉट. ठीक है? अगर इफ इट इज अ मेडिकल कंडीशन लाइक अ हार्ट अटैक, then Sharia laws, and I'm also an Islamic scholar, a small level Islamic scholar also. So this will become automatically out of range of the Sharia laws. If it is a medical condition, because medical condition means that Dr. Murad mentioned something about pain resulting in suicide, but breathing difficulty is on top of the list, even ahead of pain. So people do commit suicide because of medical conditions. I think एक दफ़ा हम लोग डिटर्मिन कर लें कि इस medical / psychiatric condition, there are like 63 variables of suicide. Okay, so the list goes on and on. तो फिर that is going to help. अच्छा, number 2, पाकिस्तान में जो प्रॉब्लम है वो ये प्रॉब्लम है पाकिस्तान में कि except for maybe Aga Khan, maybe Jinnah Hospital, there are no real short-term hospitals. ठीक है? शॉर्ट टर्म हॉस्पिटल्स की बहुत बहुत ज़रूरत है. जस्ट द वे वी हैव ओवर हियर, हर सिटी हर टाउन में शॉर्ट टर्म साइकेट्रिक हॉस्पिटल्स हैं. एंड आई वुड से लाइक more than 70%, maybe
So if you could
80%.
keep your comment, your question.
I'm keeping it short. I'll try to keep it short. हाँ? तो शॉर्ट टर्म साइकेट्रिक हॉस्पिटल्स पाकिस्तान में चूंकि नहीं हैं, इसलिए ट्रीटमेंट इज नॉट readily available for a condition which is also short term. Because most of the suicides, they pass away. If the victim survives, then they kind of move on with their lives. It's not that you're going to be successful in killing yourself.
Thank you for
एक comment
we'll
करूंगा and then I'm going to
sir,
stop.
we will get some other comments and then maybe we can come back to you. We have to be fair with the others also. So next one, Savannah.
Over here, can you do that over here, and then we'll take one from
Very quick
Mr.
question from Professor Murad Musa. Presently, I'm a former professor of public health and head of the department community medicine, and I have the privilege of working with Professor Afridi in preventive psychiatry, and even I know Choni Lal. My question is that in United States right now, the Secretary of State of Health is de-prescribing depressive medication because they have found that they are one of the major reason for aggression and even suicide and killing others. That is the country which make actually the book and the laws. Please highlight on that and just say, is it Islam? The suicide is a major sin like bribe. And what about these our crazy, insane politicians who have made the life of people to commit suicide, even if CPS physicians who are getting 50,000 during their training? Can you throw light on that, please? Because that is very important. Government is making people commit suicide.
Dr. Murad, would you like to respond to the first part of the question? Okay, maybe we can. Dr. Murad, you're mute. Mute. Sorry, Ajay.
Yeah, you can you? Yeah. ये एंटी डिप्रेसेंट का जो है इशू अबाउट इंक्रीजिंग सुसाइडल आइडिएशन और aggressiveness, it is not across the board. Many people benefit from antidepressant. In some people, yes, suicidal ideation may increase. So it has to be individualized, and you can't make a general statement like that. Millions of people take antidepressants around the world. Only a very small minority, a very tiny, minuscule minority, who are on antidepressant and go and kill themselves or make an attempt. So one has to be very careful making these statements. Like जो आपका second part था politicians का, yeah, I agree. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Thanks.
So, Mr. Essen, would you like to say something online? We're taking one online and then we'll move to the physical one. Yes, we'll take that. And then, yeah, okay.
Am I audible? Just to check very quickly.
Yes, you are.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Essen. I'm a PhD student at the Department of Social Policy Intervention at the University of Oxford, and I study the social epidemiology of suicide, specifically how it's gendered. My question is very simple, and it's to the legal experts. I'm wondering what happened within the Federal Shariat Court to animate this question again to bring up recriminalization, because we are all in agreement here that this is objectively a bad choice. But a couple of months ago, a lot of individuals sat in a room not too different like this and decided that this is something that A, was worth bringing up again, and B, was worth doing something about and recriminalizing. I've asked all sorts of people what they think, and questions have ranged from they really do think this is a good thing to all the way through, this is the FSC's way of becoming relevant again. But I'm wondering if we are to take a higher order understanding of what's going on, what is reanimating this question within the Federal Shariat Court? Yeah.
So after the decriminalization in 2022, a petition was filed before the Federal Shariat Court, I think in 2023, the early 2023, and then there was another petition which was filed in 2025. Both of these petitions were heard, and the judgment was then announced in 2026, whereby the Federal Shariat Court has decided that they will recriminalize the suicide, and they declared that the criminal amendment which removed Section 325 from the Pakistan Penal Code was against the injunction of Islam. So this is how this was the process. Someone went to the Federal Shariat Court questioning the government's intent of removing a particular section from the Pakistan Penal Code, and their arguments were that it is against the injunction of Islam. Federal Shariat Court reviewed that petition under Article 203D of the Constitution of Pakistan to see whether the removal of the section is contrary to the injunctions of Islam. And then in 2026, they have decided that yes, it is actually in fact incorrect and it is contrary to the injunction of Islam. So they directed the government within their powers under 203D to basically recriminalize it. So this is the legal the channel why it happened. One of the things that you have said, which actually I completely agree with you, relevance of Federal Shariat Court. Yes, Federal Shariat Court is trying to show that we are relevant because nobody is talking about them. Everyone is talking about Federal Constitutional Court. So they are jealous because they've taken their building also. उनसे उनकी building भी ले ली, उनसे उनका status भी ले लिया. So that's my personal opinion. I think this is what happens in Pakistan every few years, that a controversy is blown out of proportion because the judicial system in Pakistan is such that the superior courts are battling who's more powerful, who has the more power of judicial review. We have seen this in Supreme Court where so motos were happening, administrative issues के ऊपर. So this is also one of those things. But the legal channel is that जब 2023 में वो पिटिशन फाइल हुई थी और 2023 से 2026 तक वो लिस्ट भी नहीं हुई और एकदम से वो एक दिन लिस्ट होती है, उसी दिन सुनी जाती है और रिजर्व कर दिया जाता है और जजमेंट आ जाता है within 2-3 days, that actually basically puts a person who is a part of the legal system to question, okay, is it the right time? Are we living in that era where we actually be focusing on these issues and we have more serious issues?
Yeah, so we have, can you go? Yeah, please could you introduce yourself very.
My name is Zehra Ilyas. I represent Pakistan Institute of Living and Learning and Aga Khan University's Health Policy and Management program, master's program. My question is, in 2022, Pakistan Institute of Living and Learning with Taskeen, MNA, Riaz Fatiana, and many other stakeholders decriminalized suicide. And then in 2023, it came up with the suicide prevention guidelines, and in 2024, it came up with the suicide prevention strategy. So having this stance in view that now we've got suicide recriminalized, does this leave the national health policy and the mental health policy for sin that we've worked on in January 2025, does this bring us back to square one, A? And B, I just want to leave a thought. In Islam, we have countless examples, like Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam, he went through blindness because he was weeping so much after he lost his son, Hazrat Yusuf. Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went through a year of sorrow after he lost Hazrat Bibi Khadija and Abu Talib. And also Maryam alayhi salam, she also, when she was going through childbirth, she expressed the desire of being dead. So I'm not glorifying dying or suicide, but what I'm saying is, in Islam, trauma, depression and grief is sort of as something very natural to human response. So why are we making it punitive? Thank you.
So with regards to your first question, whether the policies that the government, the Sindh government or the federal government has worked on after the decriminalization, with whether that become redundant, no, it does not become redundant. We need to understand the implication of the judgment. The judgment puts back Section 325 in the PPC, but with the proviso that now it is open for the government of Pakistan, the federal government especially, to basically legislate the law again. So whatever that has happened at a policy level, that policy will still become relevant, because that policy is advocating for better health system in Pakistan and also trying to prevent suicide. So one of the deterrent factor, which is actually a very valid deterrent factor, is to work on the prevention of suicide. कि जो suicide करना चाह रहे हैं आप उनको रोकें rather than आप उनको जेल में डालें, right? तो वो policies, तो the policies are still there. They have the legal implication. The policies are legally applicable as well. It will not become redundant. But it is still too soon to say कि how will this judgment translate into practicality, because we live in a society where we're basically heavily police state society. How will the police use it, चाहे वो सिंध की हो, पंजाब की हो, केपी की हो? तो ये एक क्वेश्चन है जिसके ऊपर अभी बोलना काबिल अज़ वक्त है. दूसरी चीज जिसके बारे में आपने बात की कि क्यों हम इसको प्यूनिटिव बना रहे हैं, आई थिंक ये क्वेश्चन मेरे स्किल सेट से पर्टेन नहीं करता, बिकॉज आई एम नॉट समवन हु अंडरस्टैंड रिलीजन टू दिस ग्रेट लेवल. आई ट्राई टू प्रैक्टिस रिलीजन टू द बेस्ट आई कैन. वन थिंग दैट आई विल से, जब हम ताज़ीर के बारे में बात करते हैं, स्पेशली व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट इस्लामिक लॉ इज डिवाइडेड इनटू टू पार्ट्स. देयर इज वन which is hudud law, the law that is made by the God, which is written in the Quran and Sunnah, and you can find examples. And then there is an opportunity for the state to basically legislate with the Sharia. Sharia is your parliament, right? That is called Tazir. So Tazir is always subject to what is required for the society. So the question, again, the Federal Shariat Court failed to answer whether the society at this current time was required to penalize or make this punitive. They have not answered that question. They were the experts. They were supposed to answer that question, but they have not. So I think it's still a question.
So the one possible outcome of this could also be that this goes to the Shariat Appellate Bench of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. वो appeal so anything that is ruled by the Shariat Court can go to the Supreme Court, and they have a own Shariat Appellate Bench. And actually, that is the reason why Professor Dr. Khalid Masood, who was supposed to be in this panel also, has stepped down from the panel because he may be on that bench, so he could not be in this. So, so this could be one route. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. We'll just take one. We're trying to be as equal as we can. We have a lot of questions online as well, but we're keeping an eye out on the. We don't want the online people to feel completely left out. So we'll take it from Dr./Mr. Rashid Khan, who has had his hand up for a very long time. So we'll just take one question from here, and then we'll come back to the room. Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Dr. Khan, Dr. Rashid Khan. I'm one of the consultants psychiatrist working in UK at present. My question is that what's the way of moving forward, as they have written that there is no current law to deal with aiding and abetting of suicide. And on page 12 of the judgment, they've written around 5 or 6 of the other non-psychiatric reasons of suicide. And although we are saying that it should be decriminalized, but it is the argument from the Shariat Court that there are other reasons also. Thank you.
So in fact, I would just like to add to that and ask Dr. Murad. So, is the vast majority of attempts to suicide based on mental health issues? But you mentioned there are some that are actually not also. So, so that's one part. The other part is, of course, abetment or assistance in suicide. These are two other areas which involve a different person, not the person who's attempting it, but another party. So that's a different thing. And of course, mental health would be an issue for the person who's attempting it himself, but an abetter or a facilitator or a person who performs it on behalf of the patient, of the person, they're different issues. So do you look at all of this from the same lens of a mental health challenge?
No, it's different. Obviously, the person we are concerned about is the person who has been affected, the person who has made the attempt. Now, in making the attempt, if the person has been abetted by someone, encouraged or forced to, that clearly falls under the criminal law. And Ms. Farah Khan can perhaps throw light on that. As far as mental health aspect is concerned, we have to look at the person. What were the circumstances that made the person come to a point to make the attempt, and then try and work around that. So that is one point. Rashid ka dusra point jo tha about the ruling listing other things other than mental illness. You know, Rashid, this is in the minority. You know, for example, people using it for political gain or for terrorism and so on and so forth. These are very minor, exceptional cases. You don't make a generalized rule from exceptions. And to use that, I think it's very disingenuous of the Federal Shariat Court to actually do that. कि जी ये चीजें हो रही हैं इसलिए हम इनको एक ब्लैंकेट कवर नहीं दे सकते हैं 90% अगर लोग अगर अटेम्प्ट कर रहे हैं बिकॉज उनके हालात ऐसे हैं जिसकी वजह से उनकी मेंटल हेल्थ कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो जाती है लुक एट दैट एस्पेक्ट हाउ कैन यू जस्ट लुक एट सम ऑफ द फ्यू एक्सेप्शंस एंड देन make a ruling around that that is not correct.
Because I'm moderating and I will now take this. No, I'm going to have an unfair. I have an unfair advantage, so I'm going to use it. But I mean, in terms of self-immolation, which is very different from how suicide or attempted suicide is also looked at, right? So self-immolation could be used for political gain. Is that right, Dr. Murad? So that would be considered very different from both an academic or psychiatric purpose. So if someone is, say, for example, setting himself on fire because of political reasons, that would not technically be considered an attempted suicide or suicide, right? So
no, absolutely not. No. The context is extremely important. The context. Hamare mental health mein context is everything. Yeah. You take the person out of the context and you're working in a vacuum. Political जो suicide कर रहे हैं या poverty की वजह से कर रहे हैं, please remember that in Pakistan, for example, millions of people live under the poverty line. A small minority go in and make an attempt, and some of them out of that die. It means that these are the people whose mental health has been compromised. Similarly, for political reasons, I mean, hundreds and thousands of people are affected by the same ruling. If one person goes and makes a protest, it is obviously that person mental health has been compromised, and that, why has it been compromised? There is a huge history that why it has happened. So उसको सिर्फ कह देना कि ये पॉलिटिकल प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं सेल्फ ह्यूमिलिएशन बिकॉज ऑफ दैट, you have to look at that individual person and the individual circumstances of that person, why it is happening. And it is our duty as professionals to try and prevent that as much as possible. But to label that this is political suicide and therefore it is not self-harm, it has nothing to do with mental health, is wrong, absolutely wrong. Vast majority of the people at the time of making the act, the mental health, the mental balance is compromised. That is incontrovertible. It's correct in a very, very small minority of cases. There is a term that is called rational suicide or rational suicide attempt, where you can't find anything, but these are very small, very minority. In majority of the cases, if you do a very good thorough investigation, and I mean psychological investigation, you will always find something amiss, and it is on that basis that we devise the whole strategy of secondary prevention.
And Dr. Murad, the other examples in the judgment are very ridiculous. Like they have mentioned some TikTok challenges as examples of committing suicide, and even this next sentence they mention is that this challenge was a hoax, that fatalities resulting from this challenge are hoax. So they are presenting hoax as evidence of other means of suicide. So this is a ridiculous challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. They mentioned, I think, blue whale in there. And yes, these things do happen. But again, I keep emphasizing, आप exception से general rule नहीं बना सकते हैं. It's wrong.
So, Dr. Jawahir first, and then we'll come to.
My question is just simple कि हर लॉ में हर चीज को चैलेंज करने का कोई तरीका होना चाहिए. तो इस फेडरल शरई जो कोर्ट का डिसीजन आया है, तो कोई ऐसी बॉडी एग्जिस्ट नहीं करती जो इस फैसले को चैलेंज करे. एक और दूसरी क्वेश्चन ये है, क्या इस हमारे मुल्क में मेडिकल जो एक्सपर्ट्स हैं उनकी कोई एक एग्जिस्टिंग बॉडी नहीं है जो कि ये कह सके, चैलेंज कर सके कि ये मेडिकल इलनेस है और उसको जो है ना आप डीक्रिमिनलाइज बगैर मेडिकल एक्सपर्ट्स की इजाज़त के इसको चैलेंज, वो 2022 में वो पिटीशन एक्सेप्ट ही क्यों की गई? ऐसा कोई एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता इस मुल्क में. जी.
So for the first part of the question, I've already actually answered the Shariat Appellate Bench of the Supreme Court of Pakistan is that forum कि इसकी अपील वहाँ जाएगी. सुप्रीम कोर्ट की बेंच है जो कि सिर्फ फेडरल शरीयत कोर्ट के रूलिंग्स को देखती है. तो उधर जाती है ये. जब अगर वो जो कोई भी अपील कर सकता है इसको, जो अपील करेगा फिर वहाँ जाएगी और वहाँ सुनी जाएगी वो, और फिर देन दे विल डिलिबरेट. तो देयर इज अ मैकेनिज्म.
अपील, लेकिन एक आम ऑर्डिनरी बंदा यहाँ पर ना तो इतना करेज रखता है कि वो करे, तो उसके लिए कोई एक्सपर्ट बॉडी नहीं है जो इस चीज को उस बेंच में चैलेंज कर सके.
Can I answer?
जी.
Okay, so देखिए, this question, this judgment has now raised a question which is a public importance question, right? Public important question opens up a forum to challenge or file a review against this judgment before the Federal Shariat Appellate Bench, and that can be done through anyone. चाहे वो आपकी डॉक्टर्स की साइकियाट्रिक एसोसिएशन हो या वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हो जो मेंटल हेल्थ के ऊपर या सुसाइड प्रिवेंशन के ऊपर काम कर रही हैं, या कोई एक इंडिविजुअल जो सफ़र करेगा इसकी वजह से. तो जब पब्लिक इंपॉर्टेंस का क्वेश्चन बन जाता है, क्योंकि उन्होंने एक ब्लैंकेट जजमेंट पास किया है. जैसे मैं आपको एक एग्जांपल देती हूँ, अभी रिसेंटली एक फेडरल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल कोर्ट का एक जजमेंट आया था इन अ प्राइवेट मैटर. फेडरल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल कोर्ट ने सुनते हुए कहा कि वो क्रिश्चियन अंडर एज मैरिज का क्वेश्चन था, और फेडरल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल कोर्ट ने अनफॉर्चुनेटली उसके अंदर एज ऑफ मैरिज, कंसेंट, क्वेश्चन ऑफ कन्वर्जन टू रिलीजन सब डिसाइड कर दिए विदाउट इवन गोइंग इनटू द डिटेल्स, एंड प्रोवाइडेड अ blanket cover to all of those who are basically abducting girls and converting them into Islam, and underage girls and getting them married. I work with Legal Aid Society, and Legal Aid Society works with these communities, right? It was a challenge for us because that judgment then was being used by the trial courts, and हमारे चालान वापस हो रहे थे, investigations वापस हो रही थी कि जी conversion तो सर्टिफिकेट मौजूद है मौलाना की तरफ से, कन्वर्जन का तो कन्वर्जन वैलिड है, इस तरह के सवाल. सो वी चैलेंज दैट, वी फाइल्ड अ रिव्यू बेस्ड ऑन द फैक्ट कि ये एक पब्लिक इंपॉर्टेंस का क्वेश्चन है, एंड लीगल एड सोसाइटी इटसेल्फ दे टुक इट अपॉन देमसेल्फ, एंड नाउ वी आर बेसिकली बिफोर द फेडरल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बेंच again asking to review their interpretation, because that is a blanket interpretation. The similar thing can happen here. People who understand mental health, people who understand suicide and implications of suicide, they have now this amazing opportunity available to basically take it to Shariat Appellate Bench and ask the Shariat Appellate Bench to determine this, कि अगर आपने इसको लेकर जाना है, अगर आप इतने एडमेंट हैं कि आपने इसको वापस से पीपीसी में डालना है, व्हाट आर द नुआंसेस के जो कोर्ट को या आपके गवर्नमेंट को कंसिडर करने की ज़रूरत है इसके अंदर बिफोर दे basically recriminalize it. So yes, the forum is available.
Okay, all right, Ji.
My name is Shaukat Javed. I'm a medical journalist. My question is to Professor Murad Musa. Recently, we had a lot of cases of suicide by medical students. Have you studied this aspect? Is there or was there any role by the faculty pushing these students to this extent, or from other reasons?
शौकत साहब, ये सुसाइड्स हमेशा होती रही हैं, ये इंक्रीज नहीं हुई हैं. रिपोर्टिंग बेहतर हो गई है, सोशल मीडिया हो गया, लोगों के पास कैमरा है, इसलिए वो लगा रहे हैं. There are issues in academic institutions as we have issues in the whole society. प्रोफेशनलिज्म हमारे यहाँ नहीं है कहीं पे भी, किसी भी एरिया में. फैकल्टी का भी रोल हो सकता है उसमें पेरेंट्स का भी हो सकता है, उसमें इंडिविजुअल का भी हो सकता है. हर जो एक्सीडेंट होता है उसको आपको गौर से, संजीदगी से उसको इन्वेस्टिगेट करना बड़ा ज़रूरी होता है. जब तक वो नहीं होगा तो इस तरह से क्या से राइयाँ करना सही नहीं है और ना जनरलाइज स्टेटमेंट देना चाहिए. सो रिसोर्सेज हैं कि नहीं है, एक्सपर्टीज है कि नहीं इनको इन्वेस्टिगेट करने के लिए. आखान यूनिवर्सिटी में 6 स्टूडेंट्स में 6 सुसाइड्स हो चुकी हैं अब तक, ओवर 30 ईयर. I was involved in investigating 2 of them, the last 2, 2010 में और 2016 में. और उस किस्म की बारीकी से इन्वेस्टिगेशन करना बड़ा ज़रूरी है. लेकिन यहाँ पे इंटरेस्ट किसको है? यहाँ पे तो कत्ल हो जाता है, जहाज क्रैश हो जाता है, बड़ी बड़ी चीज़ हो जाती है, कोई पूछता ही नहीं है. तो ये सुसाइड जो इतना पर्सनल इशू है, लाइक डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस, इसमें किसको इंटरेस्ट होगा करने में? 2 दिन के लिए खबर आती है, उसको खूब उछालते हैं लोग, किसी को पकड़ के भी ले जाते हैं, लेकिन उसके बाद खत्म हो जाता है. सो संजीदगी नहीं है हमारे माशरे में. और आप एज ए जर्नलिस्ट, आप तो मेडिकल जर्नलिस्ट हैं, आपको तो बहुत ही अच्छी तरह से पता है. तो जब तक एक सीरियसनेस नहीं आएगी सोसाइटी के अंदर, जिस इन चीज़ों को ठीक से नहीं देखेंगे, इंसानी जिंदगी का अगर हम कदर नहीं करेंगे, ह्यूमन लाइफ की तो कोई वैल्यू नहीं है ना पाकिस्तान में, तो ये चीज़ें कैसे हो सकती हैं? लेकिन हाँ, बिल्कुल करिए, आप इन्वेस्टिगेट करिए इनको. एट द वेरी लीस्ट कम से कम हमें स्टेटिस्टिक्स तो कलेक्ट करनी चाहिए, नंबर्स तो देखने चाहिए कि अगर एक सुसाइड हुई है किसी इंस्टीट्यूशन में तो कितने लोग हैं जिन्होंने अटेम्प्ट किया और कितने हैं जो जिनको ख्याल आ रहा है. ये करना बड़ा जरूरी है, जो नहीं हो रहा है यहाँ पे. थैंक यू.
Sorry, उधर एक सवाल है फिर आपका. बिल्कुल. So we're going to take the last 2 questions. I'm sorry, you will have some of the speakers available after this as well. So please just, I'm sorry for those who cannot have their very pressing questions answered, but in the interest of time, Ji.
Okay, I'm Naila Nas from the Skin, and I just had a few questions legally and as well as culturally. Is this judgment was directed at Interior Ministry and Ministry of Law and Justice and PM and the President Office? So ideally, they should be the one responding to the judgment, right? So what can we do as a mental health community to put pressure on them, of course? And one more question is the detail, if you read it, is very detailed, right? And the way the Interior Ministry defended it was really, of course, you don't expect it from government to defend it as well. So what else can we present? And what is the time period that we can appeal in the Supreme Court as an individual, and as well as if the government decides to respond? And one more thing is I was reading judgment, and there was a mention of the opposition of the Interior Ministry at the they were making this law, right? So of course, I think it will be pertinent if we can engage Interior Ministry, and then of course, so they come up with it, and maybe they put some weight on it. So I guess those are the questions. Thank you.
So the limitation of filing a revision before the Federal Shariat Appellate Bench Supreme Court mein, it's 30 days. So you have 30 days of time after the judgment was announced and published and reported. So us 30 days ke andar a revision or an appeal can be filed. I'll say this again, the Ministry of Law and Justice, the President of Pakistan, the government, again, because the judgment is now being directed to them, it opens up an opportunity to basically put it for the debate in the House. What you can do, write letters, publish to the stakeholders, write to the senators if you know, write to the MPAs if you know anyone, write directly to the Ministry of Law and Justice, put pressure on the government association, the psychiatric association, the doctors ki I believe ek hai Pakistan mein, I can't remember the name. Yes, you can write to them. Talk about it as much as you want, if you want the government to basically listen to it and have the right discussion being conducted in the parliament. So I think the time is very, very limited. You have 30 days.
So how much time?
I think the judgment, नहीं जजमेंट तो आए हुए आई थिंक ये ईद से पहले आया था. हाँ ईद से पहले आया था, बट इसका जो रिपोर्टेड, हाँ इसका जो 18 मई को आया था, और इसका आई थिंक जो रिपोर्टेड जजमेंट है, जो जब रिपोर्ट होके वो बाहर आई है, एक्चुअली जो जजमेंट ऑथर आया है वो उसके 2-3 दिन के बाद आया है. तो ये टाइम पीरियड है, अगर किसी ने फाइल किया है या अगर कोई इसको क्वेश्चन करना चाहता है, और अगर आपके पास रिविजन का टाइम निकल भी गया है, फॉर एग्जांपल, यू स्टिल हैव टाइम टू अप्रोच द मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ लॉ एंड जस्टिस टू बेसिकली take the view and opinion of the relevant people. I would say this again, I have immense respect for the judiciary. I am part of the profession. I respect what I do. I love what I do. It is very interesting profession. Sab baatein apni jagah. But judges are the most clueless people you will ever meet. They are the most, no, doctors are, they know, doctors know what they do. आई वुड बी स्कैर्ड टू डेथ अगर मेरे सर्जन को नहीं पता होगा कि कौन सा ऑर्गन रिमूव करने के लिए मैं सर्जरी टेबल पे लेटी हुई हूँ. जज को नहीं पता है, ठीक है, जज को नहीं पता है. आई एम टेलिंग यू दिस वेरी ब्लंटली विद ग्रेट रिस्पेक्ट टू द जजेस. दे आर द मोस्ट क्लूलेस पीपल. दे नीड द राइट लॉयर्स टू आर्ग्यू द केस, टू एडवोकेट, to be persuasive, they need the right prosecutors to stand before them, keep on knocking their brains, this is not right, this is not right, this is not right, and then एकदम से वो क्रैक होता है. जैसे अखरोट देखा है आपने, वो वैसे क्रैक होता है, राइट? तो ये एक मसला है. एंड आई एम नॉट सेइंग दिस कि उनकी इंटेलेक्चुअल कैपेसिटी कम है, ऐसा नहीं है. वो इंटेलेक्चुअल कैपेसिटी की वजह से नहीं है.
The last question, just last question, and my name is Dr. Meher, of course, a nephrologist from SIUT, and I just want answer of a simple question. Did criminalization of suicide in past reduce the number of suicides?
I don't think any study has been done which will compare the before and after. However, since I have been actively involved in this thing, so I've just seen the same numbers being reported to different medico-legal sections across the city, and it would be further less, as you go out in the periphery. How it affects reporting, I don't think. Reporting and decriminalization and stopping of attempted suicide.
Actual number of suicides.
We can't
the
say.
Impact of criminalization law on the
The
number
reported.
yes.
We have two aspects, reported and hidden.
Hidden.
So reported, no. Hidden, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think this has been a very
If the
अच्छा अभी follow up चल रहा है, चलो.
the baseline, the bottom line of this law or intention of this law, I think, is to prevent people from suicide, to attempt suicide. I think this is the bottom line of this law. So does this law serve this purpose?
So,
No, no.
Yeah, so would your Dr. Murad, would you
Dr.
like-
Murad has done a lot of research on
so
suicide.
because what Dr. Murad
Dr.
said
Murad,
also was that the problem is not in that action. The problem is what led to that action. And now the problem is what leads after that action. The person who attempted suicide and gets caught up in the medico-legal situation and does not get mental health help and gets more stigmatized, further stigmatized, the entire family does. वो तो hopeless situation हो जाती है ना.
So this is the impact of law.
So that is an impact. So what I'm trying to say, sir, is that so there is a sin, and then there is the arbitrator, which is God Almighty. If somebody kills himself and goes to Allah, it is Allah who sits in decision, right? So does every sin, and this I don't expect an answer, but does every sin constitute a crime? So we don't know. That's a very philosophical angle to this, but does every sin, but yes, every sin, if it is committed, it is Rahmatul Alameen who can think about and deal with it, and let's leave something to God also. And let's look at our society and see what it is that we can do to help people who are troubled enough. And as Dr. Murad said, it's a very, very small minority of people who attempt to commit suicide with a sane mind or a political purpose or some other suicide bombing or whatever that. So, or as a hoax or whatever it is. So I think this was a very good discussion, and I would like to thank our speakers, Dr. Murad Musa, Dr. Farah and Sumaya, for having raised and answered a lot of questions. Of course, we can't come up with a solution, and we just hope that this gets challenged, etc. And this is the kind of discussion that CBEC Forum wants, a civilized discourse, respectful, civilized discourse. And when we agree or disagree, but in a manner in which then take this forward also. So and I think this was one of the most well-attended CBEC forums, mashallah. About 60 plus people online and 40 odd people, at least 40, 45 over here, 60 plus over here also. So the Chief Operating Officer is right, just and we are actually very, very grateful for our SIUT Trust team to have made this possible. सबसे ज़्यादा तो ये कमरा जो है ना, it's not CBEC. So this is Saima Salim, who's sitting over there. This is a media and communications room, which we've taken over. And we're very, very grateful. This वो alumnus भी हैं और हक भी बनता है हमारा, मगर उन्होंने खुद ऑफर किया, हम तो सब ढूंढ रहे थे कहाँ जाएं. और so this is the kind of round table forum that we ताकि discussion हो सके instead of a classroom session. So वो हमारा एक बड़ा अच्छा setup हो गया. That doesn't mean, Saima, that we'll be doing it every time. We'll create our own space, inshallah. Don't worry about that. And I'm also very, very grateful to all our efforts. एक तो हमारे बहुत सारे clinicians जो हैं वो SIUT के cluster से वहाँ से यहाँ आए हैं. उनके I'm very, very grateful that we were able to come, all our clinicians from Hanifa Suleiman and Ivan Farooq, etc. and Children's Hospital to all the way over here. And आते रहें, अब आप लोग आते रहें. ये अपना ही अस्पताल है, आपका ही अस्पताल है. वो चाय भी आप ही की जो भी आपको बाहर मिलेगी. और उसके अलावा of course our team over here is so energetic and so मतलब with it completely आगे बढ़ के काम करते हैं. Housekeeping में खिजर, नईम, उनकी team, security में मोहसिन भाई वहाँ बाहर, और they made sure that you get parking over here, जो कि हमेशा मसला रहता था, जो कि अब आप लोगों को नहीं रहेगा इंशाल्लाह. इजाज साहब ने एसी सही करवा दिया आखिरी मिनट के दौरान, कहा मैं करवाता हूँ, चलेगा, आपका ठंडा होगा एसी. और IT वाले फसी एंड अरसलान एंड अब्दुल रहमान तो खैर वहां से आए हमारे साथ. अब्दुल रहमान को तो हमने अडॉप्ट कर लिया है, वो हमारे हर चीज की साउंड यही करता है. So we are really grateful, and of course I'm really happy and grateful to the audience for हमारे सारे participants की बड़ी अच्छी active participation हुई है. You've actually had to hold back the questions. Thank you very much. Thank you.